Chile is incredibly receptive to foreign investment. It's an open economy. You can change foreign currency very, very easy. There's no controls. So Chile is one of the best economies in the world, in my opinion, and it's located in Latin America.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 382. What's the market like for UAS in Latin America? For that question, we head to Boca Raton, Florida, and speak with Juan Plaza, CEO of Plaza Aerospace. Plaza Aerospace is a consulting company specializing in crewed and uncrewed aviation, Latin America business development, and GIS consulting. The company helps organizations reach their goals faster by selecting the right platforms and implementing the best deployment practices. Prior to forming Plaza Aerospace in 2015, Juan spent more than 26 years as a sales director for companies such as Autodesk and Trimble Navigation, nearly all of the time in Latin America, where he developed a network of software and hardware distributors willing and eager to represent new products in their respective countries. Juan oversaw the implementation of some of the largest GIS deployments in the world and developed a reputation as a project manager with a fierce focus on finishing on time and within budget. He received a degree in geodesy in 1984 and an MBA in international finance in 2004. He's a commercial pilot flying citation jets for photogrammetry applications in the Americas, and holds a Part 107 certificate. In this episode of the Drone Radio Show, Juan talks about Plaza Aerospace, the market for UAS in Latin America, and he provides insights into how companies and entrepreneurs can successfully establish a new business in Latin American countries. But before we hear from Juan, I want to thank those of you who have been supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And by the way, if you have a great story on the use of drones that you'd like to share in a podcast, contact me at randy@droneradioshow.com. Now let's get some insights into the Latin America UAS market with Juan Plaza of Plaza Aerospace. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Juan to introduce himself.
My name is Juan Plaza, and I'm an aviation consultant, both crewed and uncrewed aviation. I'm a commercial pilot. I fly citation jets for photogrammetry, but I also am a Part 107 pilot, and I try to be the bridge between the two communities that will eventually be one through my my articles and in various publications. I write for Commercial UAV News, AOPA magazines, and geospatial magazine called XYHT.
Juan, how did you get involved with the drone industry?
So I came to aviation through my profession. I'm a geodetic engineer or a geodesist. It fascinated me that it involved airplanes. And I'm not ashamed to say that that's perhaps why I selected that profession. And in 1982, the owner of the company I was working for gave me the opportunity to be an apprentice for aerial photogrammetry as a navigator, as a camera operator. So instead of being in an office calculating coordinates with transit, and I had the opportunity to be in a Learjet when I was in my 20s, and there's nothing more exciting than being on a Learjet. So I accumulated 750 hours as a navigator, camera operator. And then eventually, late in my life, in my 50s, I got my license and I started flying myself. So everything that I do is related to aviation in one way or another. And in 2013, I worked for Trimble Navigation as a manager, for sales manager for Latin America. And one of my tools that I had to sell was an airplane. And to my surprise, this little thing called the UX5 was a photogrammetrist airplane. And I said, you can't do that I did in the Learjet. You can't do it with this thing. And the engineers in Denver laughed, this old fogey, another one, right? So they asked me to go to Denver and to the desert, and we flew a mission. Then we went to the office, and later in the afternoon, we had a digital terrain model, a DTM, of the things that we flew in the morning. And that day, my life changed. I said, all right, GPS came in the early 90s to change my profession in one way. And now photogrammetry has been democratized to the point that anybody can be a photogrammetrist. So I said, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to drones. This is not a gimmick. This is not a fad. This is here to stay.
Who are your primary clients?
I worked 15 years for Autodesk, the makers of AutoCAD, and I developed a network of distributors in Latin America for software, for Trimble Navigation for hardware and Autodesk for software. So if you have a product that you want to introduce into Latin American market, I can help you get in touch with distributors who are always looking for new products and new services. So we have introduced aircraft, we have introduced software into Latin America. And I also help some companies with platform selection. Like they have an idea, they want to do something and they want to enter, with drones. And they ask me, what kind of platform they should use.
How would you characterize the market for UAS in Latin America?
Right now, it's incredible for two main reasons. One, the skies are not as crowded as Europe and the US. I live in Boca Raton, Florida. You can look up in the sky and you see at least two Cessnas and one 777. I mean, the skies over the United States are crazy. It's very, very busy. Thousands of flights a day. That's not the case in Ecuador or Colombia or Bolivia or Venezuela or Chile or Argentina. So that's number one. And number two, the regulator, first of all, it's not that busy like here. If you go to the FAA, I say, I want to deliver pizzas in Manhattan, you're going to be thrown out of the building, right? In Latin America, people are coming up with ideas and bringing them to the regulator and getting permission to do it. And I would like to bring two that I think are very relevant. First of all, education today is universal. I mean, this is not the 30s where only a few selected few can access. All these people that have asked me in Latin America to write about them or to help them with the US market, these guys are highly educated. This company, Orchid in Colombia, the CEO, the founder and CEO, has a master in aerospace engineering from Embry-Riddle University. So highly educated, they go back to the countries and they see an opportunity. In this case, Santiago, the owner of Orchid, he saw an opportunity and he said, I don't want to deal with the end customer. I don't want to deliver packages to houses. I want to do B2B, a business to business model. And he thought about pharmacy. Medicine, wholesale medicine deliveries from wholesale pharmacies to hospitals. And he said, I'm going to kill two birds with one shot because not only I'm doing a good thing, but I'm also showing that drones are here for good. So the drones for good concept that we need to start working on if we want to convince the public to support full integration. He had created corridors, altitude, direction of flight, and he went to the regulator and he said, I would like to do this. And the regulator said, okay, so let's put those corridors into the aeronautical charts of the country, right? So now when you fly into that airspace, you know that there is activity that is uncrewed activity, right? So the hospital places an order, let's say 1,000 COVID tests. An hour later, a drone arrives at the top of the building with the order. And what Santiago did is he said, none of the drones that are in the market fit our need. So we're not going to go start a drone from scratch. We're going to buy components, fuselage, batteries, rotors, and he assembled from various manufacturers an aircraft that he can work with. And even though he always asked me to mention that it's experimental right now, it's a business model that is making money.
In Latin America, which countries seem to have the greatest opportunities for drone technology?
For locals, all of them. But we have to be realistic that there are some countries that offer unique challenges. I mean, Colombia has this reputation after they spent decades in a civil war. People are a little skittish about doing business in Colombia. Venezuela, forget it. It's a closed economy. But if we're talking about opportunities for foreigners, for people who want to go, Chile, it's incredibly receptive to foreign investment. It's an open economy. You can change foreign currency very, very easy. There's no controls. So Chile is one of the best economies in the world, in my opinion, and it's located in Latin America. These guys are the number one producer of copper in the world. And those mines, open pit mines, need all sorts of services. They have forestry, they have agriculture. Chile is a magnificent place to invest. Brazil, one of the largest economies in the world, I think it's number 8 or number 9, but they're very protective of the internal industry. It's the only country in Latin America that has its own aerospace industry. They're the 3rd largest aircraft manufacturer in the world. You have Boeing, Airbus, and then 3rd is Embraer. So Brazil is a powerhouse, and it's very difficult to penetrate. But when you see the size of the market, it's very tempting. Argentina is going through horrendous economical turmoil right now. I wouldn't recommend. They're also very protective. Everything has to be manufactured inside the country. So it's horrible to import anything that is technology.
Can you give us an example of someone who is innovating in Latin America?
One day, the government of Venezuela decided that no more aviation fuel except for military and airline. That eliminated de facto general aviation, okay? And one of the unintended consequences of that decision was agriculture spraying, crop dusting, okay? It disappeared overnight. So this guy, Emilio, he decided to do it with drones. So he went to China and got 8 agriculture spraying drones, went to Venezuela, did the course, graduated. Now he has a thriving company, and he's spraying fields, day and night. And he has a thriving company in the middle of that chaos. So the opportunities are there. And like I said, with a willing regulator, you can do a lot today.
In addition to a willing regulator and less crowded skies, what other factors make UAS successful in Latin America?
I think the competition is less fierce. People with an idea can implement it very rapidly, and at the same time, it will not have 200 or 300 other people thinking about the same thing. I don't know, but in the US, I have the feeling that every time you come up with an idea, there's at least 20 or 30 other people doing it. That's not the case in Latin American countries. So people can come up with an idea and a business model and very quickly be successful. So less competition, less crowded skies, a willing regulator. I would say those are the 3 legs.
Generally, how difficult is it to start a business in Latin America?
It's easy, but it's bureaucratic. I mean, Latin America has a very different legal and regulatory way. Everything is paper and everything has to be signed in person. And so I would say it's an order of magnitude. If it takes me 10 days to create a company in the US, literally 10 days or less, I can create a company, create a designated agent, open an account in 10 days. I will add a zero to that number for Latin America, like 100 days. Everything has to be done in person. It's a very bureaucratic, like everything in life, it's a matter of being persistent. They're not going to make it easy for you. Let's put it that way. These are countries that are not, making money, and being successful is not seen as a good thing. So you have to be persistent. But right now, before we have the BVLOS regulation in the US, right now these countries are great for starting to create revenue stream, especially if you can find a local partner that can help you. And that's some of the things that we do at Plaza Aerospace is help people find good, reputable partners in the region.
Juan, tell us more about your company, Plaza Aerospace. First of all, what's the company's primary mission?
The primary mission is help people with anything to do with aviation. We help people buy and sell aircraft, crewed aircraft. We train pilots, both in crewed and uncrewed. I have a partnership with a training facility in Miami called the USA Drone Academy. And we graduate about 15 pilots a month. We're launching now an agricultural train course and a public safety course. So we train pilots. We provide pilot services. I have a partnership with another company in Miami called Wings for Aviators. These guys have 15,000 hours in various jets. So we offer our services as pilots to bring people from point A to point B in their own aircraft. We help companies open business in Latin America. So we call it LATAM business development. And I also develop an expertise with Geographic Information Systems, GIS, which is very closely related to mapping and cartography. So we help some companies with GIS implementations in South Florida.
What does the Latin America Business Assistance Service entail?
We help North America, Canada, and the US and European companies penetrate the Latin American market. I don't help Latin American businesses be successful in Latin America. They do that on themselves. But sometimes they ask me to come into the US. One of the incredible things about this democratization of education is that one of the interviews that I had with the owner of one of these companies in Latin America is with a master from Embry-Riddle University. He told me, I don't want to be the largest delivery package company in Quito, Ecuador, or Latin America. I want to be the largest in the world. So the inferiority complex was zero. And these guys are thinking big. And why not, right? In Cemex, the Mexican cement company is the largest cement company in the world. So there's not an exclusivity to be the biggest or the largest. I mean, we have very, very ambitious and very aggressive people today all over the world. And there's no real reason why a company that deliver a good business model should not be the best, right? It doesn't have to be based in Europe or the US. So I help them when they have this massive need to be the biggest. I help them penetrate Europe and the US.
How important is relationship building when starting and growing a business in Latin America?
Extremely important. It's a different culture. You have to invest in, spending time with people and maybe meeting their families and going to dinner together. And it's a culture that is based on enjoying what you do because you're doing it with friends, as opposed to the old saying in the US, which is, this is business, this is not personal. Well, in Latin America, it's personal. It took me a while to understand how can somebody say, this is business, this is not personal. If I go bankrupt, I don't have a way to feed my family. So for me, it's very personal. So in Latin America, the enjoyment of doing business with your friends is something very rewarding. If I can develop a relationship, a friendship, and enjoy doing it, the better.
How do you help entrepreneurs and business people establish relationships?
When I mentioned about the distributors, I can give you the name of the company, but at the end of the day, what I'm giving you is the name of the owner. You're not going to be making a business deal with a company in Latin America. You will be doing business with the owner of that company. And in that sense, all of the distributors that I can recommend in Latin America are owned by individuals. And those individuals value their friendship highly. They have developed over decades close ties with the C-level, both in Autodesk and Trimble. It's a different approach, but definitely, at least in Latin America, very, very effective.
What seems to be the biggest applications right now in Latin America for drone use?
Agricultural spraying is one. I would say number one, because it's unfairly balanced because of the size of the agricultural sector in Brazil and how automated it is and how incredibly wasteful is crude aviation spraying and how incredibly dangerous it is. Not only a short-term crash, but long-term. These pilots are breathing dangerous chemicals for years. So agricultural spraying is, I would say, number one. And number two is delivery, not necessarily to the house, to the final customer, but that Orchid business model. Have you ever heard of Zipline in Africa? Zipline in Africa has conducted millions of flights already. And the conditions in some of these countries are very similar. So I suspect that medicine delivery in Latin America will be number two behind agricultural spraying.
How about mining operations?
I will put that into the category of mapping, because basically what you're doing is making a map of the open pit mine, especially for volumetric calculations. This is one of the most amazing applications. Open pit mines need to know the volume that they have extracted. And they used to do it by weighing the trucks in and out, right? The truck XYZ comes into the mine weighing 3 tons and leaves the mine weighing 4 tons. Okay. But that was subject to a lot of corruption and foul playing. So now what they do is, once a week, the surveyor of the mine flies and creates a digital terrain model, and he compares to the digital terrain model of last week, and it's a comparison pixel to pixel. So it's not an extrapolation. It's an actual comparison of the XYZ of every pixel of that photograph against the XYZ of last week. So that gives you the volume that was removed from the mine to a precision that was unheard of ever. Mapping, of course, and cartography is huge, but the barriers of entry are so low that I will not recommend anybody from outside and trying to penetrate that market. That's a market that is going to be local, because all you need to do is to buy a drone, a Falcon or a Matrix, and start your photogrammetry company. So that is not an area in which I will recommend people getting into. Agricultural spraying, yes, because the size of the drones and the size of this operation, the handling of the chemicals, these issues that are related to agriculture make it a little bit more difficult to get into it successfully.
In Latin America, where are the technology hubs located?
In most countries, the capital tends to have a disproportionate size of the economy. That's not the case like in Brazil. The capital, Brasilia, is just a little city in the middle of nowhere, and the financial engine is Sao Paulo. But the rest of the countries, definitely Chile, everything revolves around Santiago. I would say that you will have to have offices in the capital, because the regulator will only have offices in the capital. So yes, the capital city will be instrumental in anything that you need to do in those countries, with the exception of Brazil.
What have the past 9 years taught you about the Latin American drone industry?
They're faster in terms of from idea to business. It's a lot faster in those countries because you can actually get permits or even approvals way faster than US and Europe. The level of regulation here, it's enormous. And for a reason, right? The safety of the aviation industry in the US and Europe, it's incredible. And also, if you're in the middle of a field, southern Chile, and you need to fly your drone for a few minutes and take a few photographs and come back, nothing's going to happen. But if you do that in the United States without a permit, probably there's going to be consequences. So that level of freedom brings people to the table. They see an opportunity and then they launch businesses. But in order to scale, they need to do things by the book. But by that time, the idea has matured and the business is probably going to take off. So I see education being the great equalizer, because these kids are coming to the US and Europe and obtaining an unbelievable education. They go back, they have an idea, they sit with the regulator in a couple of months, in 3 months, they're up and running. It will be more difficult to do that in the US and start making money.
What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs that may want to do business in Latin America?
We have this network of distributors that I can put you in contact with them right away. And everybody's looking for an advantage. So someone who distributes geospatial equipment and has 2 or 3 different models of drones will always be interested in something that flies for longer or something that carries a better load. And so if you have something that you want to sell right away, just contact us, because these companies are looking for new products. And we're talking, the Caribbean also, Trinidad, Tobago is an oil country and they have a thriving geospatial community. The Caribbean is also super interesting for archaeological sites. And there's so many things to do in Latin America. The problem is that everybody wants to go for the big prize, right? To be successful in the US. What they don't realize is that you cannot sell in large quantities in the US right now, but you can sell in large quantities in Latin America.
Is there anything that we miss that we should talk about?
I just came from Europe last week. I was giving a presentation at a Drone Future 2022 in La Rioja, the state where all the wines are produced. But I found an environment of very, very similar to the US, okay? Heavily regulated, lots of restrictions. But one thing that I noticed is that they're obsessed with being the leaders in uncrewed aviation, obsessed. They don't want to lose the race to the US in terms of uncrewed aviation. They lost it with crewed aviation. The FAA of the United States is the leader in aviation worldwide. I noticed that the Europeans, in various conversations that I had, like I said, are obsessed with they're going to be the leaders. And they're going to be the leaders in UTM, the unmanned traffic management. They want to be the leaders in detect and avoid, DAA. They want to be the leaders in, air taxis. And I noticed that there is a very close relationship between industry, EASA, the regulator, to try to advance the cause. They have to be careful not to turn their skies into unsafe environments, but they want to be the leader. And I think that competition between Europe and the US is healthy. It's helping everybody get into a full integration of crewed and uncrewed aviation in controlled airspace faster. You and I were in Las Vegas in September in Commercial UAV Expo, and I don't know if you heard Jay Merkel from the FAA saying that they're already writing the Beyond Visual Line of Sight regulation. Randy, that is going to make the difference. That is going to catapult this industry into the next level. Once we can fly beyond the visual line of the operator, we start seeing drones making deliveries. We will see air taxis. It's going to be a fascinating time to be involved in this industry.
And for my final question, Juan, what message would you like to leave regarding the future of the drone industry?
Don't miss this wave. I learned my lesson. Believe me, this industry is going to change the way we live. Kids are going to laugh at us when we say that we waited a day for a package, for a delivery. And everything is not clear, but I think this is still the early stages of the industry. Even though you and I live immersed in this world, this is still the early stages. The perfect time to get into this industry, to invest and to make it your industry, your business, because this thing is going to grow exponentially in so many different areas. Agriculture, delivery packaging, mapping. Batteries are going to give us more time in the air. And eventually, this will affect most aspects of what we do, business and personal wise. So get involved in this industry. This is the future.
That's it for episode 382 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Juan Plaza of Plaza Aerospace. I want to thank Juan for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Plaza Aerospace or want to connect with Juan, check out the webpage at plaza.aero. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.